Hello and welcome to episode 51 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. I'm Patrick Stemp, and as always, I have Michael Ronn and Jamie Maltman here with me. How are you guys doing?
Great, Patrick. How's it going tonight?
Good. So tonight we're going to be talking about our summer reading lists. It's warmer weather's on the way, and I'm sure we've all got a lot of books on our TBR, and what are we going to sort of focus on over the next couple months? And so we'll start, as usual, with our roundtable of what we've been reading over the past week. And this week it looks like we're going to start with Michael.
All right. Well, I've been reading off and on quite a few things. The latest issue of, I've actually been listening to the latest issue of Clark's World. So short stories, science fiction, fantasy, pretty good stuff. And Start at the Beam, Season 2. So I'm getting into that. It's taken me forever to get to it, but getting into that and looking forward to getting through the rest of that. It's going to be a long one, though. It's a long audiobook, but it's cool. I love the narration. It's really good stuff. And then I just started Wired for Story, and I think that's by Nancy Crone.
No, Wired for Story, Lisa Cron.
Lisa Cron, yeah, Lisa Cron.
Yep.
And not what I expected. I picked it up, and really, really interesting. Like I guess the reason I maybe had shied away from it before was because it was build as like a scientific approach to writing and reading, but I actually really like the way she presents it. It's very fascinating.
It's probably the only book I've read digitally and then went and bought a paper copy immediately so I could reread it and mark it up.
Yeah, I ran across it in the library, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't know they had that here. And so then I grabbed a sample on my Kindle, right? Showroom in reverse. And, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then another thing that I finished this week was The Right Attitude by Christine Catherine Rush, and that's her new book that she's got out. It just basically collects a bunch of blog posts that she wrote on, I guess, how writers should be thinking, or how writers should be maintaining a positive attitude in the writing community. So she talks about all kinds of stuff, really. I mean, she talks about the how to be indispensable, how to have a long career, how to not sweat the small stuff. Pretty good from her. Probably not my favorite Christine Catherine Rush nonfiction book, but it still holds its own among everything else. I still think Discoverability and The Freelancer Survival Guide were probably her best books, but that's been my week so far.
Okay. How about you, Jamie?
So I've been continuing to read that History of the Book in 100 Books. I'm getting there. I'll be probably finished sometime this week. I'm into the early 20th century now. So just one funny anecdotal one was the Struwwelpeter or something like that. That was like a famous. Mark Twain did an English translation version of it, but it was like a book written in Germany for like working towards like moral education of kids. So it was like funny Book of Bosch, like if you know like Edward Lear stuff there, of like rhyming stuff with for kids, but it's like if you keep sucking your thumb, then the long-legged scissor man will come and chop your thumbs off, kind of stuff. So I read it to my son. He thought it was hilarious, but my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, wow, that's pretty extreme stuff. So but yeah, it was like apparently a huge hit back then and got translated into all sorts of different languages, and had some, anyway, it's just interesting contextually. Like they had some things talking about that, of like working on the moral education of kids, and the early stages of that kind of stuff, and just been such a neat book overall. So getting there on that one. With my son, I actually started reading Tintin. We actually they have volume versions now that are like these little ones like that. So we got one of those in the library and started reading Tintin in America, which you're like, ooh, for some of the stuff, and it was interesting, sort of spatially, where some of that stuff might have been happening too. It's like he's in Chicago, now he's in a native area, and now he's in like an oil area, and now he's in something else, and all pretty quickly, and riding horses. And anyway, but it was fun. He's more action hero-y than I thought he was going to be, because I actually haven't read Tintin. I have a friend who's got everything and posters in his house and stuff like that, but it was something that I just never was into as a kid. And then I finished The Rhythmatist by Brandon Sanderson. So this is one, actually, another one I think that you'd like, Michael. It's basically, it's in an alternate, I'll actually show you the map. The United Isles of America.
Interesting.
Or it's like an archipelago. So it's like gear punk school, like it's a gear punk YA school magic kind of a book.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
one heck of a classification.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and that I think ticks some different boxes that it interest you too, right? So it's basically there's this, there's a university in, I guess, where are they, like Virginia ish. Can't remember what they call it. It was just funny. New Britannia, yeah. They're in Jamestown, New Britannia, I think, is where this university is. And it's one of these universities that teaches rhythmatics, which is using chalk to make designs that can do stuff, like do magical stuff. Like you can do ones that are for protection, you can do ones that can attack other chalk things, and you can do these chalklings that are actual creatures that can run around and attack other rhythmatists, and they do duels and stuff like that. But then there's this big thing happening out somewhere where they have to train them to actually defend these United Isles against this. So there's this whole mystery story that goes on through the book. But and this main character is Joel, who's this university student who's passionately interested in rhythmatics but isn't a rhythmatics student, and so there's that whole dynamic to it. And it was really good. It's the first one in a series, but it's one book, self-contained in terms of this story, and I liked it a lot and thought it was a lot of fun. It was just a neat, just the world building stuff. And again, Brandon Sanderson's a master in fantastical world building, and this one, because it's in, his YA stuff is shorter and isn't as intense in the world building. And the really neat thing that he does in here is he has this cool world building cheat where at the beginning of each chapter he'll have diagrams by, this is Ben McSweeney that did the diagrams for the book, so in the illustrations. So he's actually sort of, it's like a textbook showing you different, the basics of rhythmatics at the beginning of each chapter, so you're learning a little bit about the magic system as you go along that way, which was kind of a neat fudge. And actually, I'd been meaning to read that for a while. I think it's been out for a couple of years. But I specifically read it because one of the Goodreads book clubs had it as one of their books of the month. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go check that out now. So I was doing that, and I also started reading playing the short game that you'd mentioned, Michael.
Nice.
By Douglas.
Smith.
Yeah, Douglas. It was another D. Smith. That's the way that they were talking about it in the bundle, right? So I've been reading that. I read the first section of it, and now I feel like it's neat. It's definitely a working book, right? Like, it's like I read that, and now I'm like, okay, now I need to go write some short stories so I can just do the activities as he mentions them as you go along, right? So I read stuff with copyright, and he does a great chapter on sort of the basics of copyright and rights and how to think differently about that in short fiction. So definitely a good book, and I didn't know he was Canadian, and that he's had a ton of success as a short fiction writer, and that's really cool. Oh, and then the short story that I got back on two things. Short story based on Patrick, I think, mentioned it either on or off air, the Egg by Andy Weir. So he said, oh, it's really short, and it gives you an intro to Andy Weir. So I went and read that. I was like, wow, it is really short, and it's really cool. Like, I think it's maybe 1,000 words, maybe. And it's available on his website, and it was one of the ones that, because I'd listened to his interview on a self-publishing podcast where he was talking about how that was one of his short stories that did quite well, that got him early readers, that then when he started to serialize The Martian online, they were some of the people getting back to him about it. So highly recommend that. And because I've been looking at some of the short fiction, I went back to my collected works, or whatever the exact name of it is, of Philip K. Dick. And I read, I think the next 4 or 5 stories in that. So, and have definitely been enjoying that. So, and then
any of those short stories stand out in particular?
Let's see. The one. Well, actually, I just read the Adjustment Team.
Okay. Yep.
So that was pretty cool. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect of the story, and so it was neat how he did it. Again, he just starts with such interesting ideas, and it's like the classic sci-fi short story in terms of its cool idea, often with a cool twist to it, or something coming. I also like the one I felt sort of. Well, again, you're not sure. Sometimes it's like what the twist is going to be, but you don't know exactly how it's going to happen. Like the one about the guy who is working on I can't remember the name of it, but he's working on defense projects, and then he gets picked up by the guy for work, but then they take him in, and he's they're going to fly him off the planet because they're saying his body's been taken over by a robot that's going to try and blow up the planet or something like that.
That was turned into a movie, Imposter.
Oh, okay, cool. Yep. So that's half the time. I don't even, because they rarely use the same or even a similar name from the short story to the movies. The movies have been floating out there, and because I haven't been following it, I wasn't a Philip K. Dick fan, I didn't know.
I don't
But
think very many people saw that movie, but I remember
and there's
enjoying
been
it.
a few of those too, right? So
I remember
I don't
enjoying
know.
it when I watched it. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a cool story. I liked it. So yes, but that's been a lot of fun, and that is my weekend reading.
Okay. So let's see. First, I finished Dennis Johnson's Jesus' Son,
Mhm.
and that's a book that had been recommended by James Altucher, and I think he was recommending it via Chuck Palahniuk, and it was good. It's very literary. He, paints a picture with his words, and kind of follows this one guy through. He's back and forth in time, it seems, not like time traveling, but just like in different periods of his life. And it's a relatively short read, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and people in not very good place in their lives, and the terrible things that they go through, and it was interesting. And then I read Stephen Brust's the second and third books in his Vlad Taltos series, so that's Yendi and Tekla, and a little bit confused as I started to read the second one because I didn't realize at that point that it was one of these series. I think there's like 18 books in the series or something, but it's one of those ones that the publishing order isn't the order that things occurred, and I was just reading something, I think in the introduction to the next book that I have of his, where he's saying, that's something that people ask him all the time is, should I read them in the order they were published or based on the timeline? And I like to read these things based on the order they were published, because, I mean, it's not like he wrote book 2. He hadn't written book 11 yet, even if the events take place beforehand. So it's not like he can have those events. It's not like it's going to be confusing if you read it in the order that they came out. And so Yendi was really good, but it takes place before the events in the first book, and then Tekla is the next one, and it's a little bit of a darker read. It's not as upbeat as the other stories, but it's good. So I can tell that throughout the series it's going to kind of take different turns throughout, maybe based on the mood of the author or what he was maybe going on in his own life. Who knows? So those are very good. I, again, would definitely suggest them to you, Jamie. I'd be curious to know what you thought of them. I just really enjoy the writing style. The character's very tongue-in-cheek. His little team that he has working for him is a lot of cool characters. And then I continued to listen to, I'm probably about to finish up in the next day or two, my first audiobook, which is The Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. And I'm enjoying that one a lot. I would say by listening to it, I imagine that the audiobook is a lot more interesting than the book itself, for a couple reasons. It's interesting to hear him narrate his own book, and he's very good. He's easy to understand, and but there are some points in the book where he gets into very technical details, and when he's at one point I was listening today where he's talking about how astronauts pee on the space station, and the big series of events that have to go into doing that simple activity, and I could see that maybe being boring to read, but listening to him say it keeps you interested and keeps you in the moment. So I'm enjoying that, and I'll wrap that up in the next day or two, and we'll probably just finish talking about that next week. And that is pretty much my week.
Awesome. Well, we have some comments.
Okay.
Amy Teagan is watching.
Hi, Amy.
And she says that, I had to reload the page here. She says that she's really excited about this topic. I just realized it's summerish. This is about the time of year when the weather changes that I get a little craving to reread the entire Anne of Green Gables series every year for like 25 years. And I replied that I need to read that, and then she says, dude, come on, dude. My husband read it a few years ago and laughed out loud, cried, and recently got a quote from the book tattooed on his body. Just saying. And she says that, man, I'm not. I feel that most of what I learned about being a good person, I learned from that series of books.
Cool.
So she rereads that like you reread
Treasure Island. Yep.
It's funny because we were just we were just talking about that off air, and Patrick and I were saying we both watched the full. I think it was a Canadian TV production, wasn't it?
Yep.
Of Anne of Green Gables back in was that sometime in the 80s, late 80s? maybe even mid-80s, could have been earlier, but which was fantastically done, and I really enjoyed it as a kid. I never actually read the books. I wonder if my sisters did, because I do have a red-haired sister. So I remember we also had Pippi Longstocking around the house too. So and that I did read some of.
So we'll obviously we're going to move into our topic of the week here, which is our summer reading. So just to make that official. So I'll with the dead air there, I'll start. So I'm going to be doing some new reading and some old reading, I think. I've been waiting. God, I must have pre-ordered like 5 or 6 months ago the new James S.A. Corey book, Nemesis Games, which is the 5th book in the Expanse series. And that's going to hit my Kindle on the 2nd of June. So that'll be a nice little surprise to wake up on the 3rd with a new book on my Kindle. Not that I need any new books on my Kindle. And then I just... there's a new release. Peter Clines, who wrote the X-Heroes books, that was that series of zombies and the superheroes that are trying to protect the remains of humanity from zombies. He's got a new book coming out called The Fold, and it's one of those. I'll ask you guys this. It's one of the. Why do people put? It's called The Fold, a novel.
Yeah.
And you see that. I saw, and I was looking at it before the show. I was like, you see that all the time, and it's never occurred to me to wonder, like, well, of course it's a novel. It's not a car. Like, I don't know.
I see that a lot in literary fiction, not so much in genre fiction, though.
For that, maybe they're just trying to differentiate from like origami books and stuff like that. I don't know. Under Google search.
Or maybe they're afraid you'll mistake it for poetry or something.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. But I ordered that one with one of my Audible credits, so that comes out on the same day. So I'm going to be busy in June. That's the first couple on my list. Go ahead.
I've got a huge list. I'm kind of waiting for my library because they switched from 3M, some ebook system, to Overdrive. So that switch happens on June 1st, which it's pretty awesome because the Des Moines Public Library kind of have to give them a hand. They've got a lot of really like cool stuff in their catalogs, like recent releases. Like I was looking up a bunch of books on their catalog, and just a ton of books that have come out within the last year, that are available. So one of the books that I definitely want to read is Neil Patrick Harris's autobiography. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a pretty fun summer read. And then I've just got a ton of others. Like, I really need to make an effort to read more books that have come out within the last year, so I can actually kind of be articulate when we're talking about the Goodreads Awards. But I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's come out within the last year or so. I want to read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. That sounds like a lot of fun. And Night Circus sounds like I know that came out, a year or 2 years ago. But that's something I want to check out, too. And I can't think of the name of the author. I know her last name is Morgenstern, I think. But, yeah, those are a couple that are on my list.
Cool.
Isn't Morgenstern the name of the fictitious author that wrote The Princess Bride? I'm just saying.
That's on my list too. Actually, the library has that on ebook too.
Okay, that's a great book.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I love the movie. So
yeah, that's something.
So so you've seen the movie, read the book, and then read As You Wish by Cary Elwes, where he talks about the making of the movie. So I enjoyed that book quite a bit too.
Yeah, that's on my list somewhere too. Next book I'm starting up, it was one that, because I'd heard him as a multiple week guest on Writing Excuses, and I'd heard about the book a couple of years ago, but Wesley Chu, so The Lives of Tao, which is about, there's an alien life form that's been on Earth for a long time, and it's like it lives in your brain, but it also gives you the ability to use other abilities, I think. And there's a couple of factions of those within humanity. Anyway, it sounds interesting, and also it's supposed to be really funny. So that seems like a light, interesting thing to get into pretty soon. So I think I'm going to start that even tonight. So that's on the news side. I finally did, after listening to Andy Weir on the self-publishing podcast, I did put in the request at the library, so I'm like, I think number 4 in line, and when that pops up, I will read it finally and join your club, Patrick. And especially cool when there's been some of the posts going around about the movie coming out in November, and some of the screenshots.
Yeah, we're starting to see those production stills and stuff that Michael had posted. Yep.
So that was cool. There's that, and then there's one of the sort of rereads things that I want to revisit. After reading some of these weird ones like the Unlondon and stuff, I want to read Alice in Wonderland. I hadn't noticed, but my wife had a copy up on the shelf here, and as I was moving some books around, I actually just picked up I was at like a kid's toy sale, and they had like a $4 copy of the paperback of Ender's Game. So I just put that in here, and when I was moving stuff around, I was like, oh, Alice in Wonderland, hey, I feel like reading that. So that's probably second or third or fourth next.
I'll be curious to see what you think of that.
Yeah. 1984 is also in that pile. Literally, like I have a literal physical stack of books on my night table that I think it's this, then 1984, then Alice in Wonderland for just this next little stretch. What do you have next after that, or what's some of the other stuff bouncing around for you, Patrick?
I'm going. I think I'm going to be doing some more audiobooks over the summer. I've been kind of slowly picking them up. The problem is I've got so many podcasts that I listen to that I never seemed to get to the audiobooks. So I'm trying to flip that around, listen to less podcasts and more of the stories. And so I was kind of poking around through some of the ones that I have just to kind of get them started. And so I'm going to be listening to Rachel Aukus' 100 Days in Deadland.
Cool.
I just kind of listened to the first chapter out of curiosity, and I've had that one on my phone for a while, so I want to get into that. And then with the Scalzi deal that's kind of been going around the internet, his 3.4 million 10-year, 10-book or 13-book deal with Tor, I've remembered that I still hadn't read or listened to Lock-In. His most recent book that was came out sometime last year, so I grabbed that, and that one's interesting because the main character in the book is apparently never referred to. It's never clear in the book whether the main character is male or female. So there's 2 audiobook versions. One is narrated by Will Wheaton, and the other one by Amber Benson. And I was kind of leaning towards the Amber Benson narration, just because Will Wheaton's voice, like, not that I don't like it, but I thought it might be distracting to hear a voice that I know from TV, and actually I did end up going with his version, and the little bit that I've heard so far I really do like. It's what was interesting to me there was that his audio version is an hour shorter than hers.
Really?
So hers is 11 hours, his is 10, and that was. Honestly, that was a selling point for me, which, like, he's I guess he's just that little bit faster, that over a period of, he's just an hour faster in an 11-hour book, I guess. So I'm looking forward to that too. So those are the next kind of audiobooks I'll be listening to.
It's interesting with him. I've started to watch some of his tabletop show that he does.
Oh, those are great.
Board game reviews, because I play a ton of board games with my family. I'm a big board gamer, so
those are always funny.
Yeah, it's actually my sister-in-law got me into them, but he does a great job with those and has some pretty neat co-hosts or guests, co-players.
Yeah.
Anyway, diversion, but I like that.
Cool. I thought of another one that I definitely want to read this summer because of the TV show that just came out, and that's Blake Crouch's The Wayward Pines.
Mm-hmm.
So I got last week I got the ebook and the audiobook, so I'm eager to dig into those.
So you got the trilogy?
I didn't get the trilogy. I just got book 1.
Okay.
I'll probably get the rest of them later, but I listened to the first chapter and I really liked it. It was interesting. So you haven't watched the show yet? No, I haven't watched the show because I want to read the book first, and I want to try to convince my wife to watch it with me. So I'm working on her on that, but because it's not kind of her kind of show, but I'm definitely interested. Definitely interested in it. The first chapter was very intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't sure at all what was going on, but I liked it in a good way.
That's when I have to go back and read the second and third book. I read the first book, loved it, and I just haven't gone back, but I definitely want to.
cool.
Maybe this summer. We'll have to see. I don't know, though, because one of the other books I started reading is The Stand.
That'll take you all summer.
That is slow going. I ticked over to 11% today on that, on the ebook version, and I was like 11%, and nothing's happened. But he's winding up. He's introducing a lot of characters, and so I mean things are happening, but we haven't gotten to the core of the big story. So it's good. He's such a good writer, though. It pays off.
Maybe that's somebody I'll read this summer. Stephen King.
Some Stephen King?
It's like an ongoing joke in my life. I always say it, but I never get it. I guess somebody else always comes up,
I would sometime when I have the time love to go back and reread the books that I grew up with of his, like Cujo, Firestarter, all some of the short stories, the Bachman books, and did my volume go down on you there? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm fine.
Okay, must just be headset volume. There was something on my screen. All the old 4 Past Midnight, the old short stories like The Mist. You've got a lot of books to pick from.
Yeah, I know, that's the hard part.
I would say, Michael, for you, having never... I mean, if you wanted fantasy, you could go with The Dark Tower, but I would honestly say a good starting point would maybe be Misery.
Yeah, that's what you told me.
That's probably a book that did I? There you go. My opinion
I think so. Yeah.
It's a good, solid, not horror with monsters jumping out of
psychological
bed and stuff. But yeah,
I think that's why I guess need to listen to more audiobooks, because it's just so much easier to consume, stories and new writers when you've got an audiobook. It's a lot harder to read Stephen King, in short bursts of 5 to 10 minutes, He seems like the kind of author you really want to sit down with.
Yeah, so pick a weekend and read it in the basement with the lights out.
To your daughter.
Yeah, wait a few years.
And then when I get scared, throw the book in the freezer, right? It's a Friends reference.
There you go. Speaking of big books, I have one of my things I'm going to do this summer. I haven't decided which yet, and maybe I'll end up doing both, but either reading the book 2, but I have it up here, The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, so the second book in his Kingkiller Chronicle, or the third book in Game of Thrones. So one of the two of those, 1,000-page whatever paperbacks, or in the vicinity, I'm gonna get into, but again, probably not for at least another month, given what I've already talked about here. I did have there were a couple of comments I saw, actually, as we were going there. Amy has had more. She mentioned she loved Night Circus, one of her favorites, and that actually the Kindle version is reasonably priced for a traditionally published book, and that one of her summer plans is also to get into the Paper Magician series, which I was looking up is Charlie N. Holmberg, and another friend of the show, I think, had marked it as a to-read. P.T. Hilton was interested in reading that too. And then here's the funny one her Anne of Green Gables, she raises you she's never actually read Treasure Island.
I saw that.
Only seen Muppet Treasure Island. So
I haven't seen Muppet Treasure Island, but I heard that's awesome. Yeah, it's good stuff. I just replied to the comment, but the writing is surprisingly awesome. So I think you'll like it, especially liking the literary fiction stuff.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Treasure Island's just a classic, right? I mean,
yeah, can't go wrong with it. That's a great summer read. It's time for me to read that again this year. I usually read it every June. So.
Oh, I just remembered the other 2 books that are sitting on my so I've got that. I've literally got my to-be-read pile. I've got all the ebook ones that I've been avoiding for a bit because I've had different paper ones coming in, or that I had. Haruki Murakami's Wind-Up Bird Chronicle was one that my wife's cousin handed to me, and I've liked other Haruki Murakami books, so that's down there too. That I'll probably get to this summer, I think. And then buried under those is my signed copy of Wool that I really should get to as well, because I really do want to read that too. So.
That's funny.
Where those pop up.
Shift and Dust actually just made it into my library, and I've read all the 9-book series or whatever. But I grabbed them off the shelf. They were brand new paperbacks. I grabbed them because my wife has read Wool but hadn't read Shift and Dust, and she banged through the first 2/3 of Shift in no time at all.
So cool! I love seeing that. I loved, just some of the other people that are either have been on podcasts or some of the other indies like. Seeing CJ Lyons books in my library, I was like, hey, that's pretty cool too, and I like that.
So the other couple other books on my list, actually 8 other books on my list. So
It's a long
I
summer.
enjoyed.
It's already really
overachiever.
It's not even summer
I
yet.
enjoyed. Well, I enjoyed the Stephen Rust, the Vlad Teltos books enough that I went and looked for. The problem with these, I guess, is that he's had several publishers, couple agents. No, they're not all available digitally.
Mismatched set, right? That's where you're going to
Yeah,
lose.
so I went looking and I was able to find, so the next 2 volumes each contain the next 2 books in the series. So there's 4 more books there from one publisher. So I got those 2 volumes, and then I think the publisher switched to Tor. I don't remember who the first publisher was, but so then they have 2 more volumes of 2 books each. So I picked up those 4 volumes. They just came in the mail today in the little box that Amazon drops on your front step from the drones or whatever, however they deliver stuff these days. So I'm looking forward to those as well.
And you'd said, were they not in ebook, or it was just like it was silly expensive?
I've seen, yeah, it's a little of both. Like one of the sets that I got was available, I believe, in ebook, and cheaper than the. But I mean, if you're going to have 11 books, I don't want 2 of them to be on my Kindle and 9 of them paper, and it's just
that would drive me nuts.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
And also because I honestly, in reading the first 3, I'm pretty sure that it's a series that my wife will love, and she hasn't made the switch to digital.
There you go.
So that's another reason to get them on paper.
See, in my family, it's total opposite. My wife takes forever to get to paper books, but she reads everything on her phone all the time. So if it's on Kindle or Overdrive or Kobo, she's good. But physical books, she'll be like, physical. Unless it's like graphic novels, then she can do it fast enough that she's okay with it.
Yeah, I can't seem to get to the library digitally. Like I've got Overdrive on my phone, but I mean I've got all these audiobooks. I've got then the straight up digital books on Kindle and Kobo, and I've got I got 8 paper books in the mail today. I don't know if ever I'm gonna. I guess I have to remember when I do want to go to the library to just check Overdrive as an alternative. I don't even think about it. I just go in the library and get what I want.
Yeah, the library ebooks have been I was kind of skeptical of them at first, but they're really convenient. Like especially with me, my daughter running all over the place with her, it's hard to take a paperback with me. So I like being able to have that convenience of getting new books on my phone.
Right.
It's nice when they've got a good catalog too.
If I had a Kobo, and I actually have my mom's, there's my mom's Kobo that I've got to reread. She has some proofread for me for one of my books on there. But if I had the Kobo, I totally would be using the Overdrive a lot because I really like the e-ink e-readers. But I still don't like reading fiction on my phone yet. I haven't made that switch.
I love it.
Yeah. I'll never go back.
Again, part of it I think is because my main reading time is right before I go to bed, and if I have that screen blaring at me, and another thing is if I switch to a new phone, because the phone she's got, it's got a more matte type screen. Mine just seems like even if I turn it down, it's just horrible to read on. Otherwise, it's too bright and I can't get to sleep. So it sort of totally defeats my whole getting to sleep cycle that reading before bed is. So, but e-ink, beautiful. I love e-ink. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. I mean, Kobo and Amazon, they keep pushing the e-readers, and I don't know. I mean, I love both devices, but I haven't touched either in months because I've got my phone, and if I don't have my phone, I've got my tablet, and you just put the app on the device, and away you go. And
I mean, you can't take your tablet to work, when you're on your lunch break. I mean, you can, but most people, it's just not as convenient as your phone.
Yeah, nobody wants to. It's the difference between one device or 2. It's simple math. You want to carry around your phone or a Kindle and a Kobo, and honestly, I mean, most people don't have both, I suppose, but it's a smaller device, and the phones have gotten big enough now that it's good enough. You don't need the extra couple inches that you get with the e-reader.
Before I forget, one of the things I want to throw out there for this topic is summer reading in general. Like, is your reading schedule going to be different because it's summer, or have there been times in your life where that was definitely a thing for you? Because I know for me, I remember especially as a teenager and university student, like as a university student, the only time I really read fiction was in the summer if I wasn't doing summer school, and especially if I had like a commute for a job. But when I was younger, I read all the time, and I read more than I did homework. But it wasn't a problem. I just did homework efficiently. But I read a lot all year round. But I do remember scaling it up and like knocking through big fantasy series every summer in my sort of 10 to 15 years.
I read tons more in the summer because what happens is I want to enjoy the warm weather, and basically I sit on my porch until the sun goes down. So as the days get longer, I'm out there later, and some nights I'll flip the porch light on and stay out even past the sun going down. I want to be outside as much as possible and enjoy the 3 weeks a year that Canada gets sun and heat, and the rest of the year I hibernate.
It doesn't really matter to me. I'm more of an inside person. I don't really like to be outside. I don't know. I just kind of read whenever, whatever. I've always just been kind of a drifter. I never really. I try to come up with like reading plans. Like, okay, I'm going to read this book next week and this book next week, and it almost never works. I just kind of. I think maybe I probably read more in the winter, just because there's no excuse to go outside or to go on a walk or whatever it is that my wife and dog would like to do. So I think it's a lot. I don't know. I think in the winter, for me, it's more of a compelling case living in Iowa and you guys in Canada, I guess. But
well, with you being young family, married, baby girl, I mean you're gonna get all your reading done on the toilet from now for the next dozen years or so.
Well, no, truer words never spoken.
I do also know that when I was younger and watching a lot of TV, the funny thing was, like, I was a big baseball fan as a kid. So I think watching baseball, and I was religiously watched baseball as a kid, so there were stretches where I wouldn't read a whole lot. But then I'd go up to the cottage and I'd read nonstop because I wasn't a very cottagey person. I would just read and read and read. Like the first time I read First Man in Rome was, a few 2-3 days at the cottage, like solid. It's funny, I think a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when I got back into really consistently reading again, it was in the summer at the end of like the sports season, because now I'm flipped, because now I'm a big basketball fan, so basketball being a winter sport takes up more of my time in the rest of the season. So summer becomes, between any TV season finishing and there's more entertainment time available for me in the summer to potentially be reading as well. So we'll see. I'm interested to see if I do ramp it up, or whether I just catch up on a bunch of other stuff with the family. Because that's the big thing, is I tend to not read when they're around other than at the table, whereas my wife does. So I like that before bed or that sort of thing type of reading.
Was another book I just started that I'll get through this summer is On a Pale Horse by Piers Anthony.
Yep, love that series, Incarnations of Immortality.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons I've been avoiding reading it is it's a regular paperback size book, and they've crammed like 400 words on a page, which right, and normally you might get about 250, 300, let's say, but so the text is small, but so I think reading it outside in the natural sunlight is going to make it a little easier. Yeah. It's a weird thing, but it's a little darker in the living room here, and I honestly just think I need some natural sunlight to be able to see the words better. I mean, maybe I need glasses. I don't know.
The one that I remember specifically that issue with was Cryptonomicon. Okay. The copy I had from the library was an older paperback one, and it was tiny, and I just remember it looked so dense. It was forbidding to even get started on it because it was, it looked so dense. And he's got a lot of detail in his stuff.
Yeah, it's like, wait, this book is 300 pages and it's 100,000 words? What the hell? Yeah, I don't think that, those aren't the real numbers, but yeah, the text is pretty small, and it's that dark black print. So while it's small, it's also kind of thick, right, on that crappy kind of grayish
Yeah.
paper.
It'll
You know,
smell a bit if it's been for a while, right?
yeah. So we're gonna give that one a go, and I do want to read it. If the paperback kind of ticks me off enough, then maybe I'll go looking for a digital version. We'll see.
I remember looking that up too to see, because I think there was, after I read it, because I think I was reading that as he, like towards the end of it, as he was writing the series, and I don't know that I necessarily read the last book or two, so I'm curious to potentially revisit that. And speaking of revisiting, the one Barry Hugert I want to get to sometime this summer as well. The one that I picked up in so there's a Humble Bundle or something, but it was the one that Patrick Rothfuss was promoting. But that's the first book is Story of the Stone, and the second one's Bridge of Birds, and the next, but it's like the Master Lee and Number 10 Ox series. It's like an alternate sort of mystery, slightly fantastical China stuff, and it was really whimsical and fun, and I absolutely loved that in early high school. And then it was a part of to promote World Builders. Patrick Rothfuss it was part of a big bundle of stuff, and I was like, I gotta pick that up, because I'd been looking at it a few years ago, and they didn't have decently priced, or even for a little stretch there was no ebook at all, and it was I think it was just in between, like switching over publishers or something, and it was out of print for a bit, and it was hideously expensive to go order online, and then I was able to get it as part of this bundle, and it was fantastic. So yeah, I'm excited to go check that out, because that's another type of thing that I want to write something like sometime down the road.
Cool. If I remember correctly, too, I believe the third Walking Dead omnibus is going to be coming out in August, I think. I'm going to have to pre-order that. Because we're way past the television show now, and I want to know what happens. That's a great, great series. And we're coming up on probably 45 minutes at least. So do we want to wrap this up? Any kind of last-minute summer reading thoughts or comments?
David Anson's watching.
Hey, David.
Hey, David, thanks for watching tonight, and that's the last comment we've got.
Just saying hi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And yeah, again, I was going to say, like anyone else that's that listens to this on the podcast, or that watches the YouTube subsequently, let us know. Like, we'd love to hear. Not that our lists need to grow any further, but it just any thoughts you have on your summer reading and how it's different stuff. We'd love to hear that too. We can share it maybe next show.
Nope. Sorry, I just got a pop up on my computer there that was blocking everything.
Cool.
I'll get rid of that. So anyway, this being episode 51, that means next week, the 2nd, is our 1-year anniversary. So we don't have like a set topic for that. We might do kind of like a look back over the past year. But if anybody out there has any specific suggestions of topics that they'd like us to talk about, we're always up for that as well. And you can email us at tbrpodcast@gmail.com at any time with comments or suggestions, or just to say hey. And you can subscribe on YouTube and the iTunes. Ratings and reviews are obviously greatly, greatly appreciated. We'd could really do with a few more of those. And thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Happy reading, everybody.